tall that were blue and glowing appeared around her in a semicircle and looked at her. And they were waiting for her to say something else, but she was so flabbergasted by actually seeing these beings, she just stood there and looked at them, and after a few minutes they disappeared.
I would like to tell you at this point that I've been talking with some 10 to 15 foot tall blue beings for several years now, and they're telling me to bring in a form of energy medicine, which I've been teaching. So I think I know who these guys are. I think they're
a very active group in our world. Very active.
I know.
There's a very esoteric form of meditation that comes from the Wudang mountain region of Tibet that was given to humans by a set of beings that fit that same description, 10 to 15 feet tall. And in this type of meditation, it's a rapid form of enlightenment where your kundalini is activated in a very controlled and pleasant, healthy manner, and the energy that is around you opens up in such a way that your physical body begins to transform into energy. And the whole process takes anywhere from 2 months to 2 years, depending on which part of the process you focus on. But it was also given to us by these same tall blue beings. When I looked at Dejanti, he was 8 to 10 feet tall and blue. So there seems to be some connection with humans and these tall blue beings.
Yeah, they've given me a name for this group. They're part of the healing corps of the Ashtar Command from SIRIUS, and they tell me their name is the Ankanash, which comes from 3 letters in the Kabbalah, meaning eye, palm of hand, and flame. So I think they're a subset of a larger group.
I do too. In a book I just read on Taoism, they say that many of the teachings that relate to enlightenment and spiritual growth in our world are given to us by beings who are from other galaxies or other star systems that come into our world and appear as spiritual beings, but in reality, they're beings just like us who have grown and evolved beyond the need for a physical form. So a lot of us are having the same sort of consciousness experience with these beings.
I can't tell you how excited I am to talk to you because you're giving me information I need. And
good.
I don't know anybody else who knows it. So,
well, there are a lot of people that know it, but the media, as it is now, is really almost flooded with information related to the secret, and that's not denigrating the secret, but there's a depth of knowledge and information that's necessary for human evolution of consciousness that we just don't get. And when you try to put it on the radio or on TV, you find that people say, well, it's too out there, people aren't ready for it. And I think the absolute opposite is true. I think people are hungry for it. I think that they're more than ready for it. And I think that in time, the evolution will become the norm. We won't focus just on trying to heal or be healthy. We'll be focusing on transformation of the physical body into something much greater than what we see now. I think that's the next step in our evolution and growth.
This talk is a discussion of some rather unusual healing experiences I've had as a physician. I'm a medical doctor. I'm board certified in forensic medicine, forensic examination, psychiatry, and neurology. And I'm a former professor at Midwestern in Arizona, but now I do strictly spiritual investigation and research. Our offices are based out of Greensboro, North Carolina. And I retired from general medicine about 3 years ago. And the reason that I retired has very much to do with the talk that we're going to go into this afternoon. during the talk, we're going to talk about some interesting phenomena that we witnessed as part of my practice that I couldn't really explain using the models of allopathic medicine that I was taught. My basic medical training was at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and my graduate medical training was at Albert Einstein Medical Center. And during that time, I was privy to being trained by some of the best psychiatric minds in the country. But what I wasn't trained in was how to understand spiritual phenomena in its relation to healing. And so that's what we're going to talk about. This talk is entitled, What is True Healing? A Fundamental Inquiry into the Hidden Nature of Healing. So let's look at exactly what this is. There are secrets related to spiritual healing that are primarily hidden from mankind. As a race, we are not usually privy to information related to true spiritual healing. We are given information around healing from doctors, from people who are in the practice of medicine, but for the most part, healing is something that we're not able to learn as an individual. We're given treatments. If you have pneumonia, you're given a pill for it. If you have a broken arm or a leg, it's usually operated on or set in some way. But in general, medicine doesn't embrace healing. If you come into my office or any doctor's office with diabetes, you will die with diabetes. We'll make your symptoms better. If you come into our office with high blood pressure, we will help you manage your symptoms and get your pressure down. But the cause of your blood pressure we can't treat. And so there is a great deal of leeway or latitude in the world now for understanding what true healing is and what spiritual healing is and how they can interrelate to allopathic medicine. Let's start with a few examples of what I'm talking about with what true healing is. The first case has to do with a 57-year-old white male who came to my office with the diagnosis of renal cell carcinoma. This is not a good diagnosis. Well, this is a cancer that usually has a pretty poor prognosis. He was accompanied by his daughter, who I was treating for depression, and she asked me to pray for her father. He was scheduled for what they call a staging laparotomy the next day, which is where they go in and they determine how far the cancer has spread in your body. I prayed over the area of the affected kidney using a prayer called the Anabacoa. Has anybody ever heard of that prayer? Okay. Anabacoa is an ancient prayer that comes to us from the religion of Judaism. It is a prayer that has been spoken and sung for many thousands of years. But it really hasn't been used very much for healing. The next day after we had spoken this prayer over this person's kidney, the surgeons could find no trace of the tumor at all. And 5 years later, he was still cancer-free. And these type of spontaneous remissions are not common for that type of tumor, for most tumors. But the question arose in my mind, how did this happen? Where did this phenomena come from? Where does this type of energy arise? And as a scientist, I wasn't willing to accept just chance or that it happens. And then it came up again. A 27-year-old white female came into our office for evaluation for depression. She had also been diagnosed with bladder cancer. Bladder cancer in a 27-year-old white female is rare. Even though she smoked, she didn't smoke enough to give her bladder cancer at that age. So we assumed that there was some other process going on. We prayed over her using a prayer called the Usnisa Vijaya Dharani, which is an ancient prayer given to the world by the medicine Buddha. And the prayer lasts for about 2 to 3 minutes. We prayed it about 5 minutes total over this lady. A week later, she went in for a staging laparotomy, and the doctors could find no evidence of the tumor at all. The tumor was over 1 pound in estimated size, and it was supposed to be about the size of a grapefruit, which made the bladder twice the size of what it should normally be. 2 positive MRIs the weeks before had confirmed that she indeed had the tumor. And 6 months later, she's still cancer-free. And this only happened last summer, last May or June. So again, the question arose in my mind, how did this happen? Where did this come from? How does this sort of energy arise? And then another case came up, except this was with a dog. A 35-year-old lady contacted me about the health of her dog, who was a Labrador Retriever. The dog was 9 years old, and it had just suddenly fallen ill. The vet diagnosed the dog with a very rare viral condition, and the vet advised that she put the dog to sleep. She refused to accept that diagnosis and wanted something more spiritual to be done for the dog. She heard that I prayed for clients and sometimes they get better, and so she brought the dog, and we said the Annabelle Core over the dog, and I gave her a recording of the prayer. Dog, for 2 days, listened to the prayer. It just sat by the speakers, wouldn't move, wouldn't go to the bathroom. And at the end of the second day, the dog got worse, much worse. So she called me, and she said, should we put the dog to sleep? Because the dog was urinating on itself. It was incontinent of feces. It wasn't eating. It started developing a fever. And I said, something said, give it another day. And so we did. So she called me later the next day and said that the dog was active, it was eating, and it was back to what she considered normal health. And she was grateful that she hadn't put the dog to sleep. And 4 months later, the dog was free of any symptoms, back to normal health. And the vet had never seen that sort of turnaround in that viral phenomenon. So again, the question arises, how did that happen? Because you might say placebo effect, but does a dog understand Hebrew? But does a dog need to understand Hebrew for it to work? And then it happened again. A lady last December brought in her pet poodle. I'm not a vet, but I get a lot of animals. And he had been diagnosed with a very rare brain tumor, and the vet wanted to put the dog to sleep. And she didn't accept the diagnosis. She wanted something more spiritual done. And this time the dog sat up again 2 days by the speakers, didn't move, didn't eat, and it was almost like the dog knew that it had to sit there. And this was just a little bitty thing. I mean, you could put it in your hand and hide it in your coat and you wouldn't even know it was there, just a little thing. But the dog had a tumor that was called a glioblastoma multiforme. If a person gets that, that person's usually dead within 6 months. If a little dog gets it, the dog is going to be dead in weeks. It's a very bad type of tumor. And it was an advanced case. And so the vet was saying, well, that's not going to help. We should go ahead and put it out, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the third day, the dog was back to normal. She took it back to the vet, and the tumor was gone. Now, in my residency in medical school training, I had done some neurosurgery work, and I had never seen a glioblastoma remit like that. It just doesn't happen. It's like seeing a broken leg heal in 2 days. That just doesn't happen. And several months later, this dog is still well, no sign of any tumor. So the question arises, how does this happen? If a person gets that, that person's usually dead within 6 months. If a little dog gets it, the dog is going to be dead in weeks. It's a very bad type of tumor. And it was an advanced case. And so the vet was saying, well, that's not going to help. We should go ahead and put it out, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the third day, the dog was back to normal. She took it back to the vet, and the tumor was gone. Now, in my residency in medical school training, I had done some neurosurgery work, and I had never seen a glioblastoma remit like that. It just doesn't happen. It's like seeing a broken leg heal in 2 days. That just doesn't happen. And several months later, this dog is still well, no sign of any tumor. So the question arises, how does this happen? Now, I'm a rational man of science, but when I'm faced with something that doesn't lend itself to rational thinking and understanding, I have to begin to then think outside the box. By training, I'm a psychiatrist. I'm not a vet. I get a fair amount of animals. I've even had people bring me in sick plants. One lady brought me in a beautiful rhododendron, at least from the picture it was beautiful. And she said she's had this plant for 7 years. And the plant all of a sudden started wilting. And we gave her a recording of the Words of Power for Healing, and the plant turned towards the sound. She had put it in a room in her, in a little greenhouse area in her bedroom area, and all the plants in that area turned towards the sound in the speakers. And something we had never really experienced before with sound phenomenon. And the plant got better. So the question arises, when you witness a healing phenomenon like this, how do you understand it at the most fundamental level? We've seen it in animals. We've seen it in plants. We've seen it in people. Is it possible to incorporate a fundamental understanding of this kind of energy into medicine? Is it some new practice or some new energy that plants and animals and people recognize at the unconscious level? Is it something that we can use as a tool to help medicine evolve? Because frankly, in medicine, we should be curing a lot more things than we do right now. So can this energy of what we call spontaneous healing be applied in a rational, controlled manner? Can this process be taught? Is there or are there individuals in the world that know how to use this energy and can practice it in a controlled and rational manner? These are the questions of a fundamental inquiry in science. And these are the questions we're going to address over the next hour and a half or thereabouts. I like to encourage questions. I like to encourage lively discussion. We have a mic, and so if you have a question we can come up front and we can ask it. But a lot of the information that we're going to present is going to make you think. It's going to present data to you that some of it you've heard and some of it you probably haven't heard. There is a great deal of research that is conducted on spiritual healing and research that gets buried. Most drug companies, when they test a drug, they won't publish the data that shows the drug that doesn't work. They won't let you know about that. They won't tell you about the placebo trials where the placebo works 60% of the time and the drug works 20% of the time. They won't publish the studies in placebo surgery. Does anybody know what placebo surgery is? Yeah. Placebo surgery is a research tool where they actually split patients into two groups. And it's usually for a fundamental type of skeletal problem like knee surgery, hip surgery, back surgery. And the patients don't know which of the groups they're in. One group gets the knee surgery. They get the full treatment, they get the incision, the repair, the anesthesia, the whole 9 yards. The second group is admitted to the hospital, prepped for surgery, seen by the anesthesiologist, taken to the OR, their knee is cut and sewn right back up. And they're taken right back to the OR or the recovery area, just like all the other patients. And guess what? The outcome is the same. In some cases,
you actually reference a real study performed by Baylor University College of Medicine. And they took 180 medical students, published in a small occult journal called the Journal of the American Medical Association, about 7 years ago. They took 180 people. They were medical students, believe it or not.
That's not the study I was referencing.
Well, I'm referring to that study. But they divided them into two groups. One group, they all needed knee surgery. They did the arthroscopy. Those that had the sham surgery did better in every parameter. So in this study, it was better, not the same, because the knee surgery is aberrative, actually.
Yeah, the one that I was referring to, it occurred in Montreal, and they were about the same. There was one actually that also showed they were doing better, where they were working on patients that had Parkinson's disease, and they did brain surgery on them, and they did the same. The point is, how would the outcome be similar or better when you don't have surgery? That's the question.
Sorry, but just to wrap up here, So in the case of the 180 medical students, or in the cases that you're referring to, in any of those cases, once those patients found out the facts, or did any of the patients ever get to find out the reality?
In year-long follow-ups, the improvement was sustained.
But what I'm trying to say, did the improvement stop when they found out?
No.
They never did get the surgery.
They found out, they didn't have the surgery, and they got better anyway.
That's amazing.
Hi, I'm a medical doctor myself, and I've heard of these studies, although I have not been able to find out actually where they've done them. And I was interested in how did they get the consent, ethically. It seems like to have something drilled in your skull and then not have the surgery must be difficult to get consent for.
Well, before we get off track too much, this is very controversial because surgeons don't like to be shown that there's an improvement with no surgery. They don't like to be shown in traditional medicine that there's sometimes more improvement with a sugar pill than with an antidepressant. They don't like to be shown that if a person has diabetes, you can control blood sugar with a sugar pill. It seems paradoxical, but it happens every day in medicine, especially in psychiatry. The point is that there's some healing energy in our bodies that we can tap into that we don't understand as doctors. We can study it, we can demonstrate it, but we don't understand it. So this discussion is a fundamental inquiry into some ways to possibly understand what this energy is and how we can begin to use it in our everyday work.